my favorite Christmas carol has been since I was a little child, and this lesson from the gospel has always been one of my favorites. And each year, as is the case with Scripture, each year it strikes me afresh. There's some new meaning that comes out of it, and year after year that builds. And so one year, after I had been riding a camel across the desert in Egypt, I really felt this lesson and this carol in a very physical way, with the rhythm of the camel, how the camel moves, and how that comes out in the carol. So I was feeling it very physically. Another year, what struck me most about this story was how it represents the paradigm of the journey of faith. A paradigm that is a classic in all human religion. It's one of the themes mentioned by Joseph Campbell in his great study of mythology. In various religions, we find stories of the pilgrim or the group of people who travel to a certain place, all the struggles of the journey towards this destination for which they're aiming, a journey up a mountain, it may be, and when they arrive at that place, they receive a gift or an insight. They have an experience that changes them, that gives them a new sense of purpose, a new focus. And as they return down the mountain, as they return back home, they come as a new person. They come as a different person. They come oriented to service in a new way. Now this struck me this particular year as I read the lesson. In the last phrase of the lesson, they left for their own country by another road. Or in the translation that I'm used to, they went home by another way. They went home by another way. They left for their own country by another road. This is a very true part of this paradigm of the journey of the spiritual life. That as we move through life, we think we're heading one direction. We make plans. And as one of my friends says, if you want to make God laugh, just make plans. Because as we can all testify through the stories of our own lives, the best laid plans, God does not tend to honor. God often has plans of God's own. And so we may have started out at the early stage of our life bearing children, assuming we were going to live into old age and die with our children living on beyond us, and a child dies. Or we may start off into college sure that we're destined to study medicine and be a doctor, only to find, once we're in college, that we're utterly captivated by lyric poetry of English lyric poetry and end up becoming an English professor. Now you can reflect in your own life of how the things that you thought you were headed for, some of them have been fulfilled, but in other ways in your life, you are traveling home on a different way. I read an article just a few days ago in the New York Times that talked about the research showing that people underestimate their capability to live into a very different life. That people, when they're questioned at one point in their life, their assumptions about where they'll be 20 years from now conform fairly closely to what they're doing presently. Whereas 20 years out, in fact, they have maybe a new profession, they have entirely new skills, hobbies that maybe they didn't even know existed 20 years earlier. Maybe they're speaking new languages, maybe they're living in a different part of the world, that we really underestimate. It's part of human nature that we underestimate the degree, the capacity for change that is part of being human. And one of the blessings of this paradigm of the journey as a spiritual life is it gives us a set of symbols, a framework in which we can make meaning out of the things that happen that aren't the way we expected them. I know many, many people, myself included, who have found great comfort in this line that we went home by a different way. We returned to our country by a different road. And that road, that different road, that unexpected way is, we find, a way of blessing. Now this happens not only for individuals, but for communities as well. The story of the three kings, the tradition is that there were three kings. The text doesn't tell us that there were three. The text tells us there were three gifts. But as some art depicts it, there's a whole retinue of sages, of magi, who come and, as the text says, open their treasure and bring out these three gifts. So this is a story not just about the journey of an individual, but the journey of a community. And I would suggest it's one that we can receive to bring meaning to our experience of faith community. What are the ways that the community expected it would move forward and finds the community is moving forward in new ways? What was expected was closed off, but new paths are opening. So in keeping with the imagery of this story, I'd invite you now to imagine yourselves in Bethlehem, approaching the scene of the Nativity. Whether you imagine it as a stable, as a house, as the text today terms it, as a cave, however you imagine it, let yourself, in your imagination, be there. Above it is a star. Whether you see that as a comet, as a five-pointed star, as a glow in the night, whatever, stand before that place in the light that is drawing you in. And as you enter, let yourself hear the sounds, whether they're animal sounds, baby sounds, sounds of a mother and a father. Let yourself feel under your feet the squishiness of the straw. And feel on your skin the atmosphere inside that place. And now wherever that child is, whether it's in a manger or in the mother's arms or the father's arms, go to that child with the gift of yourself and look. Behold that gift of God. And in the moment of gazing upon the babe Jesus, what rises up in you? What feeling, what idea, what thought? And as you step back, what might that feeling, that idea, that image, that thought convey to you about how you might return by another way? Now, having approached this scene as individuals, approach it also with the mindfulness of this faith community of which we are a part, St. Thomas Church. And let's step forward again and look into the face of that babe and receive whatever we might hear or whatever image might rise up in our mind, whatever feeling might arise, as a clue to how this faith community may move forward. Take a moment in your imagination, step forward into that scene with that question about the future of our St. Thomas community. God, who is incarnate in that baby Jesus, has plans for us. And they may not be the plans that people had in mind 20 years ago. They may be plans that are just beginning to percolate in our imaginations. Each of us here is capable of receiving some spark of that inspiration that God is bringing to us, to our community. So whatever may have occurred to you, ponder it in your heart, according to Mary's example, and speak about it among others. And so that we, like the kings, the wise people who came to worship the baby Jesus, as we do Sunday after Sunday, that we, like them, may receive the vision being sent by God and return by another way. Return by the way that is the leading of God.
We stand and confess our faith together in a Nicene Creed. We believe in one God, the Father